The intention, it's like the GPS coordinates before you go on a long journey. You're hopping in the car, you're plugging it into the Maps app. And the intention is like, where do I want to go? What do I want to achieve? And so really having the patient focus on that intention can play a crucial role.
3, 2, 1, liftoff.
Welcome to the Ketamine StartUp Podcast. My name is Kimberly Chan Ko, and along with my co-host and partner, Sam Ko, we're two physicians who have a ketamine infusion clinic in Palm Springs, California. But more importantly, we've helped multiple doctors and other licensed medical professionals start their own ketamine clinics across the United States. On this podcast, you'll learn the realities of starting a ketamine clinic, marketing it, and more. Today's episode comes from a live mastermind session that we hold with our course students. And in this session, we talked about setting, and integration of the ketamine infusion experience and how these concepts are essential to transform your patients' lives. We had a fun time during this mastermind session, and we hope you enjoy it too. Plus, if you stayed until the end, we'll even give you a tool that you can start using now to assist you in helping your patients integrate their ketamine infusion experience. Let's dive into the episode.
So let's jump into set and setting, which is a really crucial component of ketamine therapy because it is, in a way, a psychedelic medication. So we're going to talk about what that means and how you can apply it and why you should care.
And for some of you, you may already know what set and setting is, especially if you're well-versed in the psychedelic space. For others, if you've just gone through medical school and mainstream healthcare education, you're like, what? So that's why we want to take time to talk about this. The set and setting stands for, or shortens, mindset. It refers to the mental state or a person brings to their clinic. And it goes beyond just where their head is at. It's what's their motives, their motivations, their intentions, the beliefs, along with how they're feeling, the physical, emotional, cognitive state before the infusion in our case. Kind of like, where are they at? Now, the setting refers to the physical and social environment where the ketamine experience will occur. And so this includes, obviously, the physical environment, outside the clinic, inside the clinic space, and then also you. How are you showing up where your head is at? Because you are then part of their setting and their environment. Also includes your staff, as well as, the person that brought them, maybe their sister, their mom, a close friend, a significant other brought them. So they're all become characters on the stage on which they are at. They are part of the setting. And so what can you do about the setting? So you're like, how can it affect or influence rather a patient's mindset? And the way you can do it is obviously indirectly. You can't go into their head and rearrange the furniture, if you will. But what you can do is have them do some sort of preparation going into the treatment. Now, some clinics don't do anything like this. I mean, they have the standard, make sure you have a driver, no eating or drinking so many hours before. We're talking more, this is the preparation of the mind. Some clinics like ours, we have a preparatory detox from substances, such as like alcohol or marijuana, abstaining from certain activities or items or substances that can basically influence the mind and the mood. It's almost like a setting aside this time to really dive into oneself even before treatment occurs. We also encourage meditation. For some, this is a new thing. For others, it is a practice that they already have. We also talk about journaling and reflecting before the infusion, and we encourage a positive mindset. For some patients, this is the last thing. They've tried everything, and they can almost come in feeling a bit defeated, or maybe the folks around them, their support system, is not as supportive. And so what we try to encourage them is to do things and just put their mind in a place that they can be in a good space.
I think this preparation is really important. One of the examples that I give my patients is like when you consume food, like whether it's a burger or eggs or whatever it may be, that eventually becomes a part of your body. Now, similarly, when we consume content, whether that's pornography, violent movies, horror movies, music, a lot of it will also be kind of absorbed into our psyche. And so this preparation component is really important. One example of this is I had a patient, like later teens, early 20s, who was playing zombie video games the night before his ketamine treatment. And as a result of that, during his ketamine experience, he was talking about how he saw zombies. It was kind of a scary, intense experience for him because of how that video game influenced that mindset that we discussed. So having those patients prepare, kind of detox the mind can play a really crucial role. And it'll actually differentiate your clinic significantly from other clinicians who may not be aware of this concept.
Along with that, we recommend creating an intention going into the treatment. And this could be something that they do within their meditation and their journaling during that preparatory time. And, it can be, for some people, this is like, but, in this space, especially here in California and SoCal, we're really into like set your intentions and, what do you hope to get out of this? So for some, this is very obvious and something you may already even do to start your day. But we have this being very intentional about setting intention for their treatment, and ideally something that they come up with themselves, and it could be as simple as, letting go of the past, more pain-free days, more mobility. Ideally, we encourage them to come up with something that is short and easy to remember, even something that can be boiled down to one word, because then they can use it almost like a mantra, something they can say to ground even during the experience. So it's like kind of connecting that before to the actual treatment itself.
Yeah. So I tell my patients the intention, it's like the GPS coordinates before you go on a long journey. You're hopping in the car, you're plugging it into the Maps app. And the intention is like, where do I want to go? What do I want to achieve? And so really having the patient focus on that intention can play a crucial role. So for every infusion at our clinic, I ask the patient, like, what is your intention? What is your goal? And one of the important things is to frame it in a positive way. So instead of, I want to feel less depressed. So for example, instead of feeling less depressed, they may want to feel, I ask them like, what's the opposite of depression for you? Oh, it's more contentment. It's more gratitude. It's more joy. So reframing it into that positive way. There's some belief about like the unconscious, where the unconscious mind isn't really complex. It's like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old toddler. So we want to really kind of simplify the intention for the patient. And this is something you can do, is like kind of coach the patient regarding what their intention. And what's interesting is, after doing 2,000 plus infusions, it kind of boils down to like forgiveness, maybe self-love, acceptance, peace, gratitude, joy, contentment. So you'll notice some similar themes that do come up for patients. And maybe it's because we're all just related as humanity and we have, the same struggles and challenges as everyone else.
So what can you do about setting? And this one is obviously something you have more control over. There's the obvious things. You have comfortable seating, that have a comfortable chair for them to have an infusion in. There are some places that they're getting the infusion in a gurney. And so that experience, that setting is going to have a very different setting. Have it be an inviting, warm, safe environment. And so you could do also like headphones with a curated playlist, eye shades, music, aromatherapy. So you're targeting all the senses. And I think what's most important about setting is, you're going to do the basics of creating a beautiful space. We know you're going to do that. But I think what's the most important is to be you, fully present and available for the patient. Most patients, they are already used to, and you could probably relate to this when you go and see somebody for your own health. They're a little bit rushed, or maybe they're checked out, or they're burned out, and you can kind of feel that they're dealing with their own stuff. So kind of checking that at the door, being present, holding space, be that safe container for them is going to be as important. That's even more important than having this beautiful spa-like gorgeous clinic. If they know that when they're sitting in that chair opposite of you, when you're helping them get ready and get settled in before the infusion, they know and they can feel safe and they know you're going to be there, that goes so far.
And I want to kind of highlight the word safe, because that's one of the key ingredients. Is the patient wants to feel safe when they're undergoing ketamine therapy, because they're kind of in a vulnerable state. Not kind of, they definitely are in a vulnerable state. Their eyes are closed. They're, getting this medication that's going to put them in a non-ordinary state of consciousness. Like this safety and the how the patient perceives that safety from you will play a crucial role. And one of the things that we do is the vital sign monitoring. And that's what we recommend, is in a way, it makes the patient feel safe. Like I have a lot of patients report to me, oh, because I knew you were there, because I knew that my vital signs were being monitored, I knew my oxygen level was being monitored, I felt safe. And that really plays a pretty integral role in the setting that you can personally provide.
If you tuned in to our episode today, chances are you're curious about the ins and outs of starting up a ketamine clinic. It's an exciting field, but let's face it, the journey from idea to actually opening day can be quite daunting. That's why we've created something special for you. Think of it as your personal roadmap, a free downloadable checklist that lays out the essential steps you need to consider when starting up your ketamine clinic. This checklist is designed to help you avoid common pitfalls and launch your trajectory to success. So how can you get your hands on this checklist? Simple. Just visit www.ketaminestartup.com/checklist and grab your free copy today. We've made it easy and accessible because we believe in supporting our community with a valuable resource. ketaminestartup.com/checklist. All right, let's get back to our discussion. Stay tuned and don't forget to download your free checklist during or after the podcast.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next topic, integration. And similar to set and setting, this is something that some clinics, ketamine clinics do, others don't, or they outsource it. And we'll kind of talk about that more in a moment. So what is integration? I mean, to boil it down very simply, it's like the homework that one does after their ketamine treatment, and that's beyond, it is the, like reflecting and acting upon any insights or lessons, any ahas, epiphanies that they experienced during the treatment. And that's a way that you can encourage them to figure out what is that thing they can integrate, is for them to just reflect, maybe take an inventory on what they experienced. And that means reflecting on what occurred during that, and just seeing how that can inspire, maybe even tiny changes. Some patients may go, I can't think of anything. There's nothing. It wasn't anything big, like I need to leave a job or, go start, training to climb Mount Everest or something. No, it can be even like little tiny changes that they can insert into their daily life that in the long term, that little change that can make for years later a huge change in the trajectory. And I'm thinking of that one, like that analogy with like the airplane and the, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So the analogy is like with an airplane or a ship, it's actually never in one direction. It's constantly doing these micro adjustments. And even like a 1 degree change will alter the, actual location in the long run. So, we talk about microdosing, or you may be familiar with the term microdosing. I call it micro integration actions. So small, tiny changes and habits. And there's a great book. It's about habits. I'm blanking on the name. Charles Dugar, I think, is the author.
Atomic Habits?
It might be Atomic Habits by James Clear. But the bottom line, one of the lessons is like to do these small micro changes, that's actually what helps. And it's cool because ketamine, as we know, it promotes neuroplasticity, right? And so because of that, we're going to take advantage of ketamine's effect on increasing the brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which will in turn create neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, new synaptic connections. And this is where that integration comes in. I tell a lot of our patients, it's like, hey, you had an extraordinary experience, because I would say the vast majority do have quite an extraordinary experience. It can be challenging, can be really fun, it can be euphoric in a way, but having that experience and then pulling something, I call it, pull a thread, pull a gemstone, pull a diamond from the experience to bring it back home to my daily life. And again, this will help the patient grow. And, one of the paradigms that's a little bit different with ketamine versus taking like a daily SSRI is really creating these changes, really taking advantage of that neuroplasticity. So I think the integration plays such an important role in this whole ketamine therapy process.
And, beyond having these little micro daily changes, these shifts, having some sort of integration plan helps with creating a framework to, process what occurred in their ketamine experience. For some, if they've experienced non-ordinary states or psychedelic states in the past, may be comfortable with the things they had seen or more able to navigate and process what has happened. For some, this is going to be their first time. And that can be it could be a bit scary. It could be challenging. Like, what do I make of the fact I saw a relative that had long passed away, or that I was flying through space, or that I was like a toad inside a cave or something, like they don't know what to make of it. Or they might have felt very, had these feelings come up and they haven't felt for so long. So the idea of the integration is to help create that framework to process, plus to make a change in the everyday life. And so in our clinic, one of the things we do is this intention going forward. We love intentions. I love intentions. And so the idea is from that experience, what's the intention you have going forward? What's that little change that you can make in your daily life? And then, some examples are, meditate every day, be kinder to myself, do something that makes me happy or smile. What are some examples?
Yeah. So I've had minor integration for the patients and major. Like I remember one patient who was, not a super heavy drinker, but pretty regular. And their intention moving forward was, hey, I'm going to take a 30-day hiatus from alcohol, kind of like sober October that you may have heard about, or like dry January. And so they were able to integrate that, like, maybe that relationship with alcohol is no longer serving me. And I've also had minor stuff where someone's like, you know what, I'm a busy parent. I don't really have a lot of time. I have, 6, 7 kids. I'm just going to spend 5 minutes in the bathroom, just time for myself. So it could be small things or it could be major things. The other thing I would highlight is that the patient may not want to make a drastic life change in the first 24, 48 hours. Like it's like, yep, I realize I need to get a divorce. So tomorrow I'm going to start the paperwork for the divorce process. It's like, give the patients time to settle. I love metaphors. And one of the metaphors I use is like, imagine that we've just shaken the brain up like a snow globe, right? And so now we've got a flurry of activity and there's, all these little snow pieces, but let things settle before making these drastic, huge life changes. Like really meditate on it, journal on it, talk with a psychotherapist, counselor, life coach, integration coach, etc. But give yourself time before you make these major changes in your life.
For some folks, you may not want to do this, right? You're just going, oh, great. I've just learned how to do an infusion. I'm learning to juggle a business. So now I'm a business person and I'm using this new technique. Now I'm going to have to sit there and talk with them about this. Like for some of you, this is like, ugh. And for others, you're like, oh, I love this. This is like, getting you going. That means either you can have someone in-house to do that for you. You can train, a staff, ideally somebody who enjoys this first off, because the patients are going to feel it. They're going to know if a person's really invested and wants to hear about these things and to hold space for them as they process this. But for some, you may just make sure that you have some sort of framework for them or infrastructure for them to have somebody to talk with.
Well, I'm actually thinking about the secret sauce that we're going to give you, this secret simple tool. It's called Technology of Participation, TOP. You can look it up. It's a great course, but it's this 4-step process. And it's just real simply, number 1 is what, number 2 is gut, number 3 is so what, and number 4 is now what. This is a framework to help with that integration process. Probably, maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes post infusion. So it's something that you can apply and use it on your patients or maybe an integration coach that you work with. So let's dive into each one of those.
So what, so this is going to help the patient recount and reflect on their experience. So how do you usually pose that?
I literally asked them, like, tell me about your experience. What are some of those highlights? Tell me what you experienced. What did you feel? What did you see? What did you hear?
Then the gut part goes to verbalizing how they felt, maybe that's physically or emotionally.
So you can literally ask them like, well, given that experience, how did you feel? What was maybe the major predominant theme or emotions present during the infusion?
Then the so what, the third step, encourages your patient to think about the significance or any meaning of what they had experienced.
So I asked them like, what is the significance of that emotion in your everyday life? How can that apply to what's going on for you recently?
And then finally, the 4th step is now what? So this is where we start talking about the integration. It inspires them to create some sort of action, integration action based on what they experienced, and how that experience made them feel and any of the significance they drew from it. So it kind of combines those earlier steps.
So let's give an example of this. So the patient may say, for example, I'm going to ask them, hey, so what happened during your infusion? Oh, I saw my uncle, who was a really big support for me. My parents really didn't support me that much, but my uncle was a really big impact. He's not alive, but I felt like I saw him. I felt like he was there. He was comforting me. Okay, great. So that's the what. How did that make you feel? Or why is this important in your life? Well, you know, I felt really safe. I felt like I was reconnected with my uncle, and I felt a lot of positive emotions. Okay, so what's the significance of that? Well, maybe in my life, I'm not really having the support that I need. And then finally, well, now what can you do about it? Sounds like maybe I need to get more support. Maybe I need to build my community. Maybe I need to see that psychotherapist or reconnect with that psychotherapist that I've been working with. So it's a very simple 4-stage process, 4 simple questions, and it can really help solidify the integration and make meaning of the experience. Because this is what it's kind of doing. It's like making meaning of the experience. There's a great book, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And he says we're like humans are meaning making machines. So they can have this experience and they're going to apply the meaning, what it means to them. And it's just going to come from themselves. And you're just kind of coaching them and helping them through that process using these 4 stages.
We really appreciate you listening to our podcast. The topics discussed today are really near and dear to our hearts, and hope you understand that set and setting and integration will serve you and your patients. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast player if you haven't already done so. Plus, if you're up to it, please do us a favor and give us a 5-star review on your platform of choice. This will help us reach more thoughtful, entrepreneurial medical professionals like you. And again, thanks so much for listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.